Okay, hey, welcome to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. I have another cool update for you guys from the brand Vaer. Founded back in 2016 in Venice, California, out in Los Angeles County in the good old US of A. Essentially, the founders started Vaer because they couldn't afford the watches that they liked and didn't like any of the watches that they could afford. So they used their life savings to bring their vision of the perfect everyday watch to life. And they've grown out that concept, and now they even proudly offer American assembly and testing options. Now, in terms of type of watch, this is an everyday watch. Some key characteristics, and design, which you're looking for something that you can wear every day. Of course, you're going to find that versatile blend of both sporty and dressy attributes. This is their A5 Atlas in the cream dial, automatic movement, 38 millimeter USA assembled, and they describe it as a humble everyday wear with the specs and credentials comparable to a $2,000 watch. Think Seiko SARB meets Rolex Oyster Perpetual, but for more than a Seiko, but a lot less than the Rolex. These are going to go for $889 on the Elite stainless steel bracelet as featured, and this sample was kindly provided by the brand for the purpose of this review, but no brand ever has any editorial input on the review, and all thoughts and feedback are always my own. So with all that said, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get this piece in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, now it's not hard to see that this thing is a looker. Very versatile, maybe even vanilla, but all very purposeful and deliberate in terms of the choices that were made for a really balanced, super versatile package. Now, in terms of its dimensions, it's about 37.8 millimeters in diameter. Again, these are going to be my own caliper measurements. So of course they're going to typically round up on, the website listings. I'm getting 10.8 millimeters thick and 45 millimeters even lug to lug. 316L stainless steel brushed with very nicely done high polished bevels. I'll even give it a quick little wipe here, of course, because my fingerprints are going to be all over this piece. Just kind of the nature of doing a review. Check that out. Look at the bevels on the case, tying into the bevels on the bracelet. Very reminiscent of a Seiko SARB, right? Which we love. Let's say the SARB035. That was an amazing watch. For the money, was definitely a bit cheaper, but it also wasn't as feature rich as this particular Vaer, which is really nice to say. And then, of course, in terms of the other side of it, right, is on the upper echelon of watches, I think Rolex Oyster Perpetual, especially in kind of that creamy sandy dial option that they recently released. So very, very cool. You get a flat sapphire crystal with an inner anti-reflective coating. You do have this nice polished bezel, which has really great proportionality, not too thick, not too thin, so that's not like a super open dial, but it does have some nice breadth to it in terms of the way that it sits visually. You do have a screw down crown, which is actually beautifully signed. Look at the multi finishes there. You're getting matte, you're getting highly polished, and it all looks quite sharp and precise. Not sharp to the touch, sharp to the eye in terms of that high level of precision execution. Now, the movement inside is going to be your standard Miyota 9015, and it's going to have a 42-hour power reserve beating at 4 Hertz, so a nice smooth beat rate of 28,800 vibrations per hour, and this has been tuned to be accurate to -5 to +15 seconds per day, which is great. So that means worst case scenario, of course, it's going to be -5 or +15, which is actually pretty nice, especially considering there's a lot of brands that really don't do any type of regulation at this price point, and you're going to be kind of going off of the bog standard tolerances for a movement. Nice to know that, of course, they are doing a fair amount of in-house tuning here. And you can't see the movement with that display case back, which is nice as well. Now, getting into the dial, you have this cream kind of satiny. I wouldn't call it matte, because it does have a bit of a sheen to it. So I'll say satin, not brushed satin, but again, it's kind of that just satiny, creamy finish to it. Very, very nice. It does have the date at 6 o'clock, which a lot of people will enjoy. And it is a fairly deep set. So I will say, if you're looking at this and feeling like, oh, the date seems kind of offset, it's not. It's just kind of the way the light, because it's a little deeper than the frame there. Sometimes the shadows will fall on it in funny ways to make it just kind of visually appear a bit offset. But I will say it's actually pretty close to perfectly centered across the date disc. And a lot of the times it's just you're holding it at an angle, the shadows are offsetting, and it's making it appear more off-centered than it actually is. So there's that. Now, this does have brushed and polished hands. So look at the little details there. Look at that sword hand there for the hour. Do you see how it has the brushed down the center? And then, of course, it's not actually black. It's just high polished. And that's what's reflecting off of a black lens in a dark studio office. Now, in terms of the lume, it's going to be BGW9 Super Luminova. So it's going to have that nice clean white presentation in daylight, and then a nice green hue in darkness. With that screw down crown, you're going to get a nice confidence inspiring 10 atmospheres or 100 meters of water resistance, which is fantastic. Solid end links that are female end links, so great drape from that perspective, guys. Look at the brushing quality on that mid case, the transitions in between that bevel work. It's quite impressive. I honestly I like Vaer, and I feel like they typically lean more towards tool watch, kind of more industrial finishing, but they really did their efforts to really elevate this. And I think that bevel work, the beautiful, kind of hairline-esque brushing there, very, very precise. So again, quite impressive. This does have quick release, or I should say toolless, I guess it's quick release end links there. Spring bars. So you do have that. That's toolless as well as quite quick and convenient for that 20 millimeter lug width. So that's going to be easy to swap out. The links here are actually fully articulated, guys. Check this out. Look at that. So they're not 3 links jammed together. They can fully swivel. So that means extra comfort when it comes to the drape when you're getting your hand in and out of this watch. And this bracelet, of course, with those nice bevel edges, also is going to feel quite smooth. So again, an elevated experience all around when it comes to that execution. You're also going to have about a 4 millimeter taper from 20 millimeters down to about 15.9 or 16 millimeters rounded up at the smallest links. This does have screw pin construction there, and then you do also have, check it out, very nice Vaer clasp, push button. It does have the nice clean folding section, as well as that notice derived toolless micro adjustment / kind of swell and extension for you if your wrists do swell in the heat, or if you just want to dial in sizing, because these links aren't super long or anything like that, so you don't even necessarily need a half link, but you can dial it in quite nicely, and I appreciate that about this setup. So with that said, let's actually get it on the wrist and see how it wears. Okay, as you guys can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, or 19 centimeters in circumference, sits really, really beautifully. Quite a sweet spot at just about 38 millimeters. Slightly smaller, again, from my calipers. So for those of you who might be more 37, 36 kind of interested, I'd say, again, this is going to have a very special and compact footprint. Of course, if I get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to notice quite a bit of perspective distortion. The sides of my wrist are going to fall away, and thus the sides of the bracelet, making the watch head look like it's much larger. But what I'll do is keep my wrist nice and low, and then just tighten up the frame here so that you guys can still get a detailed look, but just add a bit of a truer aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And look at that. Very, very clean. I'm loving the transitions on those bevels that just go all the way down and through. I mean, this thing just has all the bells and whistles. So there's definitely a lot to like here, a lot to be impressed by. And although my wrist is on the larger side of average at 7.5 inches, I will say that it's quite a tall and round wrist. So it's not like it's just this wide, flat, and accommodating wrist where I can kind of pull off anything. I am still very cognizant and careful about things like lug to lug width or just overall proportions, dial to bezel ratio, and I think this just fits really beautifully. Great everyday piece, not so small to where you kind of need it to be dressy or like need a cuff for this to be tucked under. I think this will look great with a pair of shorts as well as a pair of slacks and everything in between. So I do like that in terms of the versatility. Now, of course, there's a lot of watches that are very capable, and you kind of think of them in that adventure watch space. Even in the GATA, right? Go anywhere, do anything. But, for you to be able to go anywhere and do anything, sometimes that means dressing up, right? So it's not just all about having that screw down crown and extra water resistance and potent lume to be seen in times of darkness. It's also about having a clean, uncluttered design that offers you a fair amount of versatility going from event to event with various themes. And again, I think this fits right in, whether, you're throwing on a pair of driving gloves and you're going to go do some spirited driving out in the canyons, with a motorsports kind of lens, or even going to the beach or going to the boardroom and everything in between. I like that you have this thing that just feels quite sporty, but still quite refined and elegant at the same time. Look at that mid case, guys. Look at the organic flow there of those turn down on the lugs. The nice satin brushing there on the sides of the case. Just really, again, it just flows. It feels very nice. And then even down to the links here, do you notice how they have a bit of a contour to them? They're not just a grain of rice. There's a little bend, right? They're almost asymmetrical. Like you won't be able to get these links upside down. They hug the wrists ever so slightly. And of course that follows that case shape, which hugs the wrists ever so slightly with its, mild crescent inwards towards the wrist. So I do enjoy that. And of course this clasp, it does what you need it to do. Of course the extension, if you get it all the way extended out, a bit unsightly, but I was able to get it dialed in, and I don't think I'll ever need to expose that piece. But if I was swelling for whatever reason to that level, the nice thing to know is that it would be on the underside, so I would be less likely to notice it anyway. So with that said, let's go ahead, get this piece off the wrist, set up for some lume shots, the light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Hey, check that out. You can see that lume extends. I mean, the handset is really, really, again, illuminating even the underside of that dial. So one thing I do like to work in, of course, is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because now is going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming out of buildings, walking underneath overhangs, you're just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice with these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And guys, this is, again, quite a sweet spot. Typically, I like a stark white dial, but I'll say this tan coloration here, that's light creamy texture to it. I wouldn't say it's textured, but yeah, it just adds that off-white, that little bit of warmth. It's just, I don't know. It just feels even more versatile, because now you don't have to have something that's really crispy white. And then also it's going to give you a fair amount of extra, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. There's just a little pop to it. I enjoy it. What do you guys think? Do you wish that they'd make a straight, a white, or maybe like an opaline silver, like a pale silver that renders visually white? I don't know. Of course, I'd always kind of opt in for something like that, but I have to say this, of course, yeah, same thing with the Seiko SARB, where it had that kind of off-white nature to it, and it just made it just really, really versatile at the end of the day. Because, yeah, rarely things are so pure and optically bright like that. So you have something like this, it just adds a little bit of personality without making it, you know, something to where there's just so much pizzazz that you're trying to, you know, make it look okay or trying to match things to it. Like, this is just going to kind of flow with everything, whether it's, again, underneath the sleeve, peeking out, or just on your person, you know, as you're wearing some casual clothes. Maybe you're just wearing tank top and board shorts, or maybe you're in some straight business casual. Maybe you're on the golf course and you're wearing all of the fancy tech pants and shirts and breathable SPF blocking gear. Like this, again, it just feels very, very versatile from that perspective. And the nice thing is it even has versatile specs, capable specs to go along with those versatile design cues. And look at that. The BGW9 is glowing beautifully. And you still have great orientation with, of course, knowing where the 12 o'clock is, knowing where the 6 o'clock is due to the lack of an indice there. And then, yeah, you're not going to confuse the hour, minute, or seconds hand. So they just followed all the rules. Like, they knew what people wanted. They've been listening, and this is what they delivered. And I have to say, I'm glad that they did. So closing thoughts from you guys on the wrist: classic proportions, borderline mid-size without feeling quite undersized, thanks to those dialed in proportions. So for those of you that do prefer watches on the smaller side, I think this could still fit for you. And then those of you who might prefer a full-sized watch, again, I think this thing hits a real sweet spot. In terms of model variants, do check the site links for current options and availability. These are often selling out, coming back into stock, and selling out again immediately in terms of whenever there's kind of something new from there, especially the fact that this is elevated. This isn't just new. This is like their finest work to date, I have to say. Like, I like their other stuff. And of course, with a turning bezel, you can have some extra pieces of tactile engagement. I can score, you know, as I'm, you know, going line by line on this, but in terms of just the fine details, the fit, the finish, the fully loadedness of just each bullet point here, where it just, again, probably all it could use at this point would be some type of hard coating. Like, that would be awesome. You know, a lot of brands are using clear DLC coatings to give you that 1200 hardness Vickers without adding any type of, you know, tint to the watch, which it can somewhat have a slightly darker hue to it. The nice thing about it being unprotected means you can polish the bezel as you get scratches. You can rebrush the bracelet as you get scratches. So that might be beneficial to some, so they kind of prefer that. Also, if your skin is very sensitive, having something uncoated in terms of having the steel on there is going to be much more comfortable versus a coating. Sometimes that can be something that might irritate your skin, especially if you sweat on that material. But in terms of comparable models, guys, the A5 Atlas does remind me a lot of the JDM Seiko SARB035 combined with the latest Rolex Oyster Perpetual. And although a lot more expensive than the SARB, it's also a lot cheaper than the OP. So, you know, I think this is still quite value rich. Bottom line from you guys, Vaer have been continually stepping up their game with every new release, and with the A5 Atlas, I personally think they've achieved something truly special that does feel noticeably elevated in a very premium way. Now, it's not, you know, COSC, it's not Swiss, it's not German, it's not Japanese. So in terms of kind of those more heritage-oriented checkboxes, you're not going to have that. But they're building their own heritage, right? Like, this is a USA brand. This is a California brand. So if that means anything to you, I think you can still derive that little extra bit of value. But I mean, even if, as long as you're not like worried about the country of origin, I think the end product you're going to be very impressed with. Even at the $889 price, I think under $1,000, this watch really, really competes, especially when you think about just the design. It's a great looking design, quite handsome, quite versatile. It gives you just enough iconography to where it feels familiar without feeling very derivative, right? Because it is borrowing certain elements, but it's not an homage watch by any means. So let me know what you all think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please like, and if you're ready, please do subscribe for more content. just like this. Thanks, guys.